It is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Lisa Philp, all the way from Burlington, Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Howard.
So, Lisa Philp, RDH, is the Chief Visionary Officer of Transitions Group North America, a full-service coaching company for dentists. Her career began with clinical hygiene in the United States and Canada to the creation of a periodontal disease management program in which she coached thousands of dental professionals. She is currently a leader, author, and coach, and highly sought-after North American speaker. So, Lisa, what do you like to speak on? What's got you passionate these days?
Well, dentistry has always been my passion for the last 3 decades, and helping dental practices be better and have a better future than their past, and with growth, retention, and fulfillment in some very interesting changing times.
So be honest and fair to the new grads. Do you think it was easier for us getting out of school back in the day, or do you think it's harder today in 2016?
I would say it's probably harder and how you define harder in the regards to the number of dentists, the competition, the consolidation, all the different things happening with access to care for North Americans to attend the dentist. But I also think generationally, when the baby boomers were graduating, basically the field of dreams, you put up a sign, you let some of your friends and family know, and you had a practice of 1,800 to 2,000 patients in a couple of years. That's really been the biggest struggle, especially in the urban centers. So I would say now it really, the big difference in hard is you can't be successful by accident like you could over the last 20 years. It takes work, focus, and energy, and a team approach with your dental team.
And what do you think about what do you think about corporate dentistry? Where do you see that at now? Where do you think that's going? What are your thoughts on corporate?
Well, I think corporate dentistry is growing. I mean, there's no denying that. The facts are out there. I think because of the large number of dental students being accepted and graduating, and the large debt load they're coming out with, and knowing that when a dentist graduates, their most important thing to work on when they first graduate is their speed and skills. So corporate dentistry does provide the busyness factor, and they have a chance to have some security. I think there's some challenges with our standard of care and with keeping competitive to not have dentistry commoditized. That scares me a little bit with corporate dentistry and with the consolidation model.
You know, I always wonder why dentists get freaked out when a corporate dental chain opens up across the street from them. I'd rather practice across the street from 5 corporate chains than some of the guys I go against. I mean, I go against right up straight from me, my buddy Tom Mattern. I mean, he's been giving it 110,000% for 3 decades. I mean, they retain their patients, they retain their staff. I mean, I see corporate. I mean, a lot of these chains don't even keep their average doctor a year. People are always coming in with me with all these $5,000-$10,000 second opinions on these monster treatment plans that they've never seen before, and it's kind of like I'd almost rather just be in a town where there was like all corporate and just me. I'd want to be the only free enterprise guy. Do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. I think you have an above average emotional intelligence and probably see the value of the patient relationship and understanding the patient, not just their oral health. And I think the practices that are surviving and thriving are the ones that are focusing on the patient experience, moving from an appointment to an experience. And there's always going to be people that are going to go for the lowest price in and out. However, many of them that do experiment with corporate dentistry often come back to a patient-centered, relationship-driven practice, like I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah, and I also see consumers bounce around. I mean, sometimes you want to go out for a $5 taco at a high-end Mexican restaurant, and sometimes you want Taco Bell for 2 tacos for $1. I sometimes they go to corporate because they have an emergency. That they'll call their doctor they've been going to for 30 years, and he's on vacation. He can't get him in for 2 weeks. So consumers are complicated. So what do you so your website is Transitions Online. Transitions Online. What would my homies find on that website?
Well, you'd find several hundred articles of content on all aspects of the dental practice, from the health of the team to the owner to the leader to communication, all of our offerings and services in our training workshops and our coaching programs that we offer across North America, and hundreds of client dental testimonials of the wonderful partnerships we've had in coaching.
So what was you graduated from Tennessee State. What went wrong in Tennessee so bad that you left the entire country and moved to Canada? My God.
Yes, it's called biological father.
Biological father?
Yes, and in Canada at the time, to be a dental hygienist, you had to go to dental assisting school and work for a couple of years before you would be considered. And dental assisting would not be on my list of unique abilities.
So you
But I love dental hygiene.
so you moved to Canada for why then?
Well, I was from Canada. I went to the East Tennessee to go to the hygiene curriculum there.
Oh, so you were born in Canada.
Yes.
How come
yes.
how come you haven't said A yet?
I spent a lot of time in the United States, I guess.
You lost your A. You know, one of my favorite movies of all time was actually Fargo, and it's not Canada, but they all had that Canadian accent. North Dakota. I swear, when you go to North Dakota, you think you're in Canada by the accent, and that movie just nailed the Canadian accent. My God, that was awesome. So you talk about the impact of all 5 engines that operate a dental practice. What are the 5 engines?
Well, the 5 key engines of any dental practice, I use an acronym called CREPT, C-R-E-P-T. The C is for capacity, revenue, expense, patient, and team. And those 5 key segments and engines all running on time at the same time is what really is truly drives, with the metrics and the people involved, drives the future of growth and prosperity for the practice.
Okay, say it again. CREPT stands for capacity, revenue. What's E, P, and T?
Expense, patient, and team. In no particular order of importance, just an acronym word helps people remember.
Huh. And so let's can you rant about each one of those? Can you start with C, then go R, and then I thought EPT was an early pregnancy test, but now you're saying
it is. Not
it's
when you're turning 50.
So talk about your CR early pregnancy test.
Okay. Well, capacity is really another word for the facility as far as what our offerings are with our retention of our patients through our hygiene program, the available hours. You know, you talk about access to care in the corporate dentistry conversation, Howard, and a lot of their advantages, they're open 7 days a week for all facets of the schedule. So a practice that was just Monday to Thursday, 9 till 4, those days have changed quite a bit. It doesn't mean people can't remain and do that, but that's changed as far as their capacity. Capacity, if you really simplified it, is a tripod of the patient, a provider, and a chair, all functioning during the available hours for productivity with minimal no-shows and cancellations. And over the years, no-shows and cancellations and the devalued hygiene appointment has been a conversation over and over and over again. It's usually and always the top 3 things that keep dentists up at night, in my experience.
Well, repeat that. You say these are the 3 top things that keep dentists up at night. What are the 1, 2, and 3? Say it again.
The top 3 things that keep dentists up at night are their human resources and their team, their case acceptance, and no-shows and cancellations. Then it goes into their profitability and the currency and money part of it. But as far as the and also insurance is ranking up there as number 2 or 3 as a common barrier obstacle that a lot of practices are talking about, mainly because of the managed care situation. But as far as the capacity of your facility with your patient, your provider, and a chair is really depending on how you retain patients through your recall program, how you manage your volume and engineering your schedule, and dealing with how many treatment rooms and how many providers do you need for the patient base that you service that's active.
You know, when you talk about patient retention, it's my belief. I've never seen patient retention. I mean, if you find a dentist that's been practicing 10, 20, 30 years, they still need new patients, and they live in a town of 5,000. So when corporate comes in, I'm like, okay, why are you worried that corporate's going to steal your patients? I don't know anybody who kept all their patients. I mean, when I go look at the Colorado River coming out of the Rockies, they put that big Hoover Dam there where no patients get out the back door. and they got a lake there you couldn't swim across. But that's not dentistry. I think the water coming down the river almost equals the patients going out the back door. And maybe if you can keep maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 patients for 10 years, you got $1 million practice. I mean, do you really even see
Yeah.
patient retention? I mean, how many 60-year-old dentists do you know that don't need any new patients? Say, nah, our doors are closed. We can barely service the ones we've got.
Well, I would never support them in ever closing their practice because there's always a growth factor. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. From the retention of who they have, it was interesting when there was tough times in 2009 and 2010 with what people were perceiving as the recession in dentistry, is really the ones that made it through it and survived and thrived are the ones that did go back to who brung them, which is their patients who are loyal to them right now. And I think, the average dentist working 32 hours at the chair needs a good 1,600 to 18 active patients. There for many decades was enough to go around. I think that fear factor comes from if they don't feel like they have enough, or also their schedule's open, and we know when the schedule's, there's white space, there's a lot of lost productivity, but also increased expenses. So I think from the perspective of, yes, we see patient retention, I think hygiene's the lifeblood. If you can keep them coming through hygiene at least once a year, then keep them in service, then you take a chance of them staying loyal.
Oh, come on. You're just saying that because you're a hygienist. You're just pandering to your homies.
Oh, I haven't done clinical hygiene in many decades. However, I do believe hygiene drives the loyalty because they have the more time with the patient, but it also fills the doctor's schedule 70-80% in 4 to 6 weeks from now. And that's, I believe, in the next 10 years of dentistry is going to be one of the most critical relationships the patients are watching in the transfer of trust through the hygiene exam transfer and through how the dentist and the hygienist communicate. And that's not just because I'm a hygienist. Dentists are my clients now. But I think when that relationship works, case acceptance goes through the roof, team morale's better, and we're all in it together.
I have hygienists come up to me at every seminar and say, my dentist won't let me read the x-ray. They won't let me diagnose. They say that that's illegal in the state of Texas, and in Georgia, you can have your license taken away. And then I always say to them, okay, give me a name of all the hygienists in prison today in America for reading an x-ray and diagnosing a crown. What do you say to that? Because you're talking to a lot of dentists right now, and a lot of them, they want their hygienist to sit in there and clean the teeth and not do an exam because it's illegal.
Yeah, so I mean, the days of pick and flick are over. The hygienist is a huge advocate because think about it, really the only patient generationally that really believes the dentist when the dentist says you have a problem, here's a solution, is our wonderful traditionalist born 1945 or earlier. As soon as the doctor leaves that treatment room, the patient looks to the hygienist, the team member, and says, would you do this if you were me? This is expensive. What do you think? Is he telling the truth? Is she really seeing what she says she's seeing, depending on the gender? I think the advocacy of the dentist, never before have I seen dentistry have to be such a team sport, because every patient after 1945 looks to the team to make the best decisions they can make and then help them understand and know what's going on in the conditions in their mouth and how we can solve them.
Okay,
I will always believe you.
Well, one of my big missions is the fact that a dentist doesn't blink at spending, $100,000 on a laser, $100,000 on a CBCT, $150,000 on a CEREC machine, and I always tell them, that those are toys. That they see them as magic bullets. I buy that, I'll fix my business, and I always want them to buy a consultant. And they just, I tell you, if you want to sell yourself, you need to wrap yourself in aluminum foil and put some red dials on there and antennas sticking out, because they always buy shiny toys, but they don't buy consulting. And every dentist I have known for 30 years has a millionaire practice, I mean, they haven't had one consultant. They've had 4 or 5 over the last 3 decades. So I want you to paint a picture. Who's listening to you right now that if they got your services, you help? I mean, is there a sweet spot in what you're helping, or they're wondering, well, I'm not bad. I mean, needing a consultant, that's like saying, I have a problem. Who's your best customer? Who's listening to you right now that would get a return on investment? They gave you $1, they'd make the $1 back and make another $1.
Well, I mean, our greatest success, believe it or not, is with conventional successful dentists already. And I say it's taking them from great to greater.
Yeah, but the reason that is because all the great dentists use consultants. I mean, you talk to
Yeah.
you look at the you talk to the ADA economists. They'll say the average practice does 750 and they take home 145. But you talk to a consultant, they'll say, oh well, the average dentist does 1.5 million. That's because the cream of the crop is always humble enough to say, hey Lisa, come in and help me. You don't,
Yeah.
and the ones where you would be like God coming back to earth will never call you.
Right.
So talk to that guy right now that's sitting there thinking, I know how I'll solve my problems. I'll learn bone grafting and start placing sinus lifts and implants when his entire business is not poised for growth.
Right. Well, first thing I'd say is dentistry is a human capital business, and the dentistry that they're technically learning in the technology they're purchasing doesn't mean anything if they don't have the engagement of the patient to want to be open to hearing about it and want to be involved in that process. I think really to the frustrated dentists, the ones that don't know how to help themselves or don't know there's another way, that have not feeling sorry for themselves or feeling like there's all these external sources to blame and that the world's unfair in dentistry, but the ones that really are feeling some of the pain, anxious, they're on a decline. The most dangerous time in dental practice's life cycle is 18 to 22 years. And that's where 9 out of 10 dental practices hit a plateau. And when they hit a plateau, that's when often complacency can set in. And if a plateau isn't constantly looked at with outside experts and getting resources to deal with the operations, I mean, dentists weren't taught how to be a leader, how to motivate 8 till 11 wonderful women a day. If they're in the gender, that part of the gender, they weren't taught the business. And I don't see that changing. Being in the dental schools in this continent, I don't see that being a progressive change to help dentists be better business people during their education at all. That's probably, to me, one of the biggest stalls to keep up with everything else. But I think at the end of the day, you put the people first, the money comes to buy the things, and the team drives the patient decisions. The patient loyalty is driven by how you treat them, and they want to be satisfied. You know, we hear a lot of practices say the patients are so much more demanding, they're pain in the butt, they're so needy, they want so much more from us. And I say, really, all they're looking for is they want to have satisfaction and a mutual exchange of value in this part of their health care. And if they understand that dentistry is a major part of their health care plan, their decision making is different. It's not perfect, but it's different with their case acceptance, their ownership of the disease, but that's all communication. 85 cents on every dollar in dentistry comes from our ability to meet human capital needs, not how technically great we are at the axial inclination measurements of the length to root ratio of the central incisors, because we have a lot of code language in our high intellect profession that actually stops us from getting patients to engage and say yes, as opposed to help them. They don't say yes because of how smart we are. They say yes because of how we make them feel during their experience. And that's what I would speak to, is look at the patient experience, look at the culture of the practice. There's always an answer, and every problem in dentistry has a solution.
So then who's calling? So why are people calling you? Okay, so they're probably doing, okay, if the average dentist is doing 750, taking home 149, what's the average person collecting and taking home, calling you, and why are they calling you, and what are you doing for them?
Well, they call us for a lot of different reasons. It could be, everything from they want to have a team morale, team development event to build a high-performing team and keep them motivated, to they don't know where to start when they first get out in their career. And they've talked to a lot of wise, more mature dentists that tell them, if I just would have learned the operation and the practice management in the early stages of my career, I would be in a lot different position. So I think, yeah, I mean, we're still doing this decades later, and there's still hundreds of us helping dental practices be better. But I think they're calling really, truly, because they're either frustrated or they don't want to just be complacent that everything they've done in the past is going to guarantee their future. Or sometimes it can be they're just so in a pit of despair that they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They're taking huge write-offs from insurance companies, thinking managed care, thinking that's going to build their volume. I really, Howard, probably the biggest thing that we see here with my team that services North America is there's something about dentists would rather be busy than productive. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it's if we're busy, then we feel like we're doing the right thing. But no, it's not about being busy. It's about being productive. And how do they be productive? It doesn't happen just by showing up 2 minutes before the day with a team of 6 to 10 people and winging it through 20, 30 human experiences without planning, without preparing, and without the follow through. Those days are gone.
When you say the most dangerous years of practice are 18 to 22 years, and that's when 9 out of 10 dentists hit a plateau, how many of those offices gave their staff an astrology raise every time the Earth went around the sun one revolution and just ticked up their labor to where it's out of control? And now you walk in there and based on the astrology raise, they've given their assistant a raise every year for 22 years. And you're looking at this stuff, and then they've signed up for all these discount plans. So the assistant got a raise every time the Earth went around the sun, because that's what raises should be based on, astrology, and not net income or profitability. And then he signs up for all these PPOs, like 82% of American dentists have done. So how do you fix that?
Well, I think the decision, you can't go back and change in hindsight a decision that's already been made. You can look at it and say, how do we maximize this? I mean, the performance and the human resource is probably why it's one of the top 3 things that keep dentists up at night is they weren't taught that, but also they have no processes in place for engaging the team. A dentist that shares his numbers with the team openly and they goal set together will have a 10% increase with doing nothing different by pure human awareness. But when the dentist says to me, I don't want to share my numbers, you know what, I don't want them to be involved in that. I say, well, they're adults, they can do basic math, and then they think you take home $2 million anyways. When you involve the team, then they can be involved in their performance incremental increases because they're aware of what's happening in the business. As far as these fee-reduced insurance programs, I mean, they're a tough nut to crack because they are creating busyness with less and less productivity all the time. And I think, think of what dentistry's done for years, how they filled white space. Basically, it's let's call as many people as we can and let's just look busy by filling white space. When you have fee-reduced insurance programs, you've got to really be a strategic scheduler with pre-planning, with blocking out your schedule so that you can make the most of what you have there as far as patients, and also knowing what is their oftentimes we get the call, I want to go off this PPO. Well, how do you know you want to go off that? How many of your patients are on it? What's your dollar per loss per year? It's if they would just look at a decision strategically before they just made it in crisis, because often those decisions can't be reversed. Not all the time, but often. I think it's fee-reduced insurance is having an impact. We've got to get through it. We've got to look at really, is it worth it to be busy for 60 cents on the dollar or to work a few less hours at 90 cents on the dollar? That's the decision individuals have to make.
So, these dentists, I mean, I know my homies. I mean, shit, they know the difference between geometry and trig and physics and calculus. I mean, I know that none of them are dumb. I mean, you couldn't get a dental degree if you didn't know math and physics and chemistry. But do you think a huge problem is the fact that Henry Schein's soft Dentrix, their commitment to not tying it up to an online accounting like QuickBooks or Quicken, so they don't know the cost of that. They'll schedule an hour for an MOD composite, and they sign up for a PPO that's giving them a 40% reduced fee, and their management information system, which, doesn't have any accounting costs. I mean, to call Dentrix or EagleSoft a management information system would be like calling me a Chippendale. It's just, it's just, do you think that's a big part of their problem, that the fact that their management information system isn't hooked up to their payables, receivables. They don't know the cost. I mean, they sell stuff all day long, and they'll walk out of a room, and I'll say, you just did an MOD composite, and you're on 13 PPO plans. How much net? I mean, after your adjustment, how much revenue did you get? I don't know. Well, what did that room cost you? I mean, you've been working 16 days a month for a decade. You got the same rent, mortgage, equipment, bill, that computer, insurance, malpractice, the same staff. How much does that all cost you when you're in an operatory for an hour? I don't know. So basically, you sell shit, you don't know the price, and you don't know your cost. Whereas when you find a millionaire outside of dentistry, I'll say, how'd you make $1 million? They say, see this bottled water? I made it for 40 cents, and I sold it to all the grocery stores for 80 cents. And I sold 10 million of them. I mean, everybody knows, but it seems like, and it's the same thing in hospitals. No one in a hospital knows any cost. And you wonder why America spends more on healthcare than any other country on earth.
Absolutely. And you're right that knowing their break even, purely just knowing your overhead, what are your fixed costs, your variable costs, and your break even. I can say, do I think it's because the practice management systems don't communicate? I also know a lot of dentists that wouldn't look at it anyways, or their practice management systems can be a Cadillac that they don't utilize, right? So I think it's really they've got to ask themselves. You know, I often say people in denial seem a little bit happier for a longer time until they figure out and have to face something that they didn't know. Being in denial right now with the embezzlement happening with dentists, with what's going on with them not knowing their margins is what's burning them out. And I don't know how not knowing would ever help you have a better future than your past. I can't think of any exception to that.
I just heard you're Canadian. When you said burning out, you nailed
Out.
it. You were Canadian
Out
on the word out. So when you say denial, I assume you're talking about a river in Egypt?
No, it's not.
So keep going down your CREPT. We were talking about CREPT, C-R-E-P-T, capacity, revenue, expense.
Now, so within
what was the
those,
P? What was the P? Patience.
Patient.
And
Yes.
team. Where did you leave off before I rudely interrupted you half a dozen times?
You didn't. Revenue, I think our revenue engine is very simple metrics of our collections, our case acceptance, our adjustments. You'd be amazed, Howard, or you probably know this, how many dental practices, when they're on fee reduced plans or they give courtesies, they don't track the adjustments. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of practices that aren't putting in their full UCR fee and tracking adjustments, which probably is a big cause of why a lot of them get embezzled. But looking at their fees, increasing your fees and increasing them every summer, not in January when credit cards are giving payment breaks. You know, these are simple things and they've been around for a long time. We've been talking about them, but dentistry, there's still people not doing it or paying attention.
You're talking about raising your fees. How many times do you go into office? Do you figure out how many PPO plans are they on, and how often do you look at these and say, okay, you're on this many PPO plans, and you're absolutely not making or losing money on this number of them?
Well, when we do our initial visit, which is our analytical business planning visit with a client, we go through all of the aspects to where every single aspect of their business. So a lot of times the fees, you can't take them from, you stayed at 2005 fees to 2016 all at once. So it's working out a process of how they can get their fees up to being charged what they're worth. If they do not enter the full fee, these insurance companies will never give them fee increases because they're basically telling them our usual and customary fee is what we negotiated on your contract. There's a lot of little things that can be done to help them have success, but they have to make the choice to learn about them and do them. I mean, it's about change, Howard.
Do you ever go in there and cancel some of their PPO plans?
Well, we do an analysis using a software program that we work with of what are all their PPO plans, what are their top 5 where they lose the most dollars based on their top 40 procedures. And then if we really look at the puzzle of it all, and there are some that's not going to wipe out their patient base, right? If you have 2,000 patients and 1,500 are on one PPO with a few different policies, you can wipe out a practice really quickly. To me, that is never a question anyone should answer yes or no based on without collecting more information, because I've seen other some of my colleagues tell dentists to drop their plans, and I mean, they have nothing left. Nothing meaning very few patients, because they didn't do the research on which ones strategically drop over time.
Okay, this is Dentistry Uncensored. You haven't mentioned the fee. If I went to Transitions online, Transitions plural online, for what you're talking about, for how much are your services? Do you do it long distance? Do you fly all the way to any state in America except for Tennessee? I mean, how does this how does this work?
Well, we provide services. We're a full service coaching company in both Canada and the United States. So we provide speaking. We have myself and other people in our speaking. We provide virtual learning. So the e-learning and the virtual process of dental teams learning content before and getting the knowledge before the change coach shows up is a big part of our future. Also, from 2-day simple modules of targeted solution of a key part of their 25 pieces of their practice, to a full business plan of someone who wants to relocate, expand to do a 3 to 5 year business plan and make sure that that's going to be something that they stay on track with. I mean, we do training, coaching, speaking. Sounds like we say we do everything. We do have a vast array of services because we're servicing both countries.
And I was wondering, when you live in Canada, what percent crazier are Americans? Would you say we're 10%?
Yes.
What? 20%?
I'd say Americans are louder, but when I come to Canada, they tell me I'm so American. And when I go to United States, they tell me so I'm Canadian. And I have dual citizenship, so it works for everybody.
Okay,
but
I
love Americans. They solve problems out loud.
They solve problems out loud. When you talk about a CREP, you talk about capacity, revenue, and now on ease, expense. The most common question dentists always ask on dental expenses is what do you think the expense category should be? Do you have rules of thumb that you like the expense categories to be?
Sure, we have. You have your basic fixed expenses, Fab 5, I call them, right? With your facility, your fixed, which is your rent and to keep up where your location is. Your salaries and benefits, which, as you mentioned, tend to be getting out of control. I mean, they shouldn't be more than 30% ever, if you're ever going to have a viable business. Your technology costs oftentimes are a fixed cost now. And looking at we call it the miscellaneous fixed expenses, your malpractice payments, all your insurance, all the different things you need to protect yourself. The variables where you go into lab.
Wait, on the Fab 5 was facility, salary, technology, and miscellaneous. I missed one.
So the Fab 5 are wages and salaries, facility. The next one is your insurance and risk management dues. Then your lease debt. And a bucket we call general expenses, which is really a catch-all because you know how QuickBooks is. It has 25 different charts of accounts. So things that go in there, they might have a monthly fee on their general expense, telephones, different things that they might have a monthly payment on that we really put in that bucket and pull out with the client when we're going through it with them. The variable expenses are lab.
The variables, the V8?
The V8, yeah.
Okay, V8, lab,
dental supplies, office supplies, promotion and marketing. That includes their digital footprint, their website, all that kind of stuff. Their technology, their repairs and maintenance, their associate cost if they have any, and of course their coaching and consulting fee.
And when you're in office, which one of these is usually the problem? I mean, is there I imagine all your clients think they're completely unique and they're probably mostly all the same. Is that fair assessment or not really?
Yes, it's absolutely accurate. I think probably the people costs have gotten out of control because they don't have any human resource controls. Absolutely. I mean, the facility is the facility. The facility benchmark ranges is so different depending on where you are, and you can't do much about that unless you have people negotiating that for you or you own your building. Right? But I'd say, when a dentist said to me, I'm so happy my lab bill's low, I'm not sure why that's a happy day. That's not a good day, meaning if your lab bill's low, you're doing a lot of drill and fill dentistry and you don't have the bigger appointments in your schedule. And of course, they'll always work in small tune into their providers of dental supplies. Dental supplies are dental supplies. Oftentimes when they put that much focus on it, when someone's over concerned with these expenses, like to an obsession point, it's often not the expense that's the issue that can be changed. It's there's not enough money coming in the top end in collections. I mean,
Yeah, I've always thought when a doctor is, obsessed with maximizing his number of operatories and his dental supplies, they've always completely missed the big picture of revenue, production, collection, case
yeah,
acceptance. I mean, if you want, if the price of anesthetic is keeping you up at night, you probably is like going to the airport waiting for your boat to come in. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
You've got great analogies. I could
Yeah.
talk to you all night. But yeah, so from the revenue perspective, another big thing too, Howard, is dollars diagnosed. You'd be amazed or not how many dentists are holding back on diagnosing obvious conditions in the oral health because of prejudgment of the patient. Forget, this is just basic health of the gums, hygiene, teeth, jaw joint, and smile. So we do a lot of work with them on making sure that all their needs dentistry is clearly diagnosed, documented, and at least presented to the patient. That's a big part. Case acceptance is my passion. Case presentation and case acceptance, but I think a big part of it is if a dentist doesn't diagnose it, there is no treatment plan or dentistry to do. There is no facility to access. There's no productivity per department, per hour, per visit. So that's a big part of where we focus on the revenue metrics.
Is on case presentation and case acceptance. That's a big
Pardon?
area. You said a big area you focus on is case presentation and case acceptance.
Yes, one
So
more, yeah.
so rant
Yeah.
on that. Rant on that. What could they do to increase their case acceptance and
Well,
case presentation?
there was. So there's systematic approach. We know that we diagnose the condition, we plan the solution the dentist is comfortable in delivering technically. We present it and we make it affordable. If they follow the systematic, what I call the left brain systematic processes of that, with the fastest growing position in dentistry and the most impactful, which is the treatment coordinator. When a patient born after 1945 can be escorted to a knee-to-knee conversation with a person who wears normal clothes to ask all the questions of all the jargon of the smart people in the white coat they couldn't understand, and there is flexible financial options and financial partners that we can make dentistry affordable, case acceptance goes up. The communication part of it is the patient will not or cannot accept a treatment recommendation unless they perceive it as a solution to a problem they own. And for them to own it, they must be interviewed, not lay them in the chair and we show up and throw up all our smartness of their PBMs and their RCTs and then wonder why they ask us if insurance pays for it. Not diagnosing and planning to dental insurance limitations is key. Diagnosing and getting it documented with it being explained clinically, then transferred to an admin office with a financial policy and flexible ways to pay.
I agree that so much. My mom was a diehard Catholic and drug all seven of her kids to mass every single morning when we got up 7 days a week from birth to when I left home at 17. And
Wow.
and one of the things about human nature that I'll never forget is I never saw anyone ask a question. No one, and people, everyone that complains about the president. I mean, I've never met an American who ever liked a president. And every time they complain, I always say, "Well, did you send him a letter? What did he say?" "Oh no, I didn't send a letter. I just bitched to you." They don't talk to physicians, dentists, lawyers, priests, rabbis, politicians. So I completely agree that when the doctor gets out of the room, they turn to the assistant, they turn to the hygienist, they turn to that's when they start to open up. They don't open up to doctor got an A in physics.
Right.
It's just not human nature.
Yeah, and when a doctor says, "Do you have any questions?" adults don't want to look stupid and like they don't know. And they know if they say yes, they're going to keep talking in this language they don't understand anyways.
So explain to me this too. The doctor doesn't need a treatment coordinator because he's the smartest person in the room. How could anybody else explain this to the patient? And then he explains everything, and you're standing in the office, and when the patient checks out, I mean, every single one of them has got a clinical dentistry question. I mean, what do you think of the process of when you go into a dental office today, they saw 20 people, and every single person that checked out is standing there pointing to their molar to some poor lady sitting behind a desk. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm saying there's systems you can put. There's checkout, like a patient that's properly checked out from the back to the front with a proper transfer doesn't usually do that. Also, in the clinical room, they need to stop talking 80% of the time, let the patient talk 80% of the time, and learn master interviewing skills. It's a learned skill. Barbara Walters can learn it. You can learn it. I can learn it. They need to ask before they tell. If there's two key communication fundamentals that are critical, is ask what they know before you start talking to them, and don't answer statements. You'd be amazed how many times we answer statements that weren't questions, and we confuse the patient even more. I mean, the patient wants to be heard, but they can't be heard if we don't ask great questions. And when we say do you, are you, could you, have you, yes or no, I mean, there's no engagement. There's no interaction.
So a lot of dentists always ask the question, can a doctor talk money? Can I have empathy, love, and concern for you and want the best for you and your teeth and gums, and then start talking about money?
Well, I often say probably the worst people to discuss the money and the limitations of an insurance policy are the clinicians. If we kept you think about it, all healthcare offices do this, all businesses do this. You have someone with their unique ability dealing with their area of expertise and mastering it. So it's not that I haven't seen dentists be able to do financial arrangements. I have. However, when you combine the financial arrangements with the expertise of the diagnosis and the treatment planning, it muddies the water in the decision making. Not to mention the dentists I've seen in 25 years, barter, discount, teeth for tile. I mean, they get into, it can't help but help impact their self-esteem by being ground down on discounts like the Kmart store when they're talking about a healthcare. So I often say, the clinical diversion to the business office, not the front desk, that's a piece of furniture, but to the business office to discuss the insurance and the financial concerns, because they're the experts in that, is what works the best. And not getting into dollars and, what's my policy cover and what did my employer say I could have done. And it's with a clinical closure question. If every clinician, before they left the clinical room with the patient there, basically said, what other clinical or technical questions can I answer for you before I take you to the business office for them to fit this into your life and budget, our case acceptance would go up. And that's not because of Lisa's fancy question. That's because we are bridging the expertise, and we're not expecting someone to be a technical, high left brain, cognitive, high IQ, brilliant, perfect impression taker, and then getting them to do currency, insurance plans, fee reduced plan. It's too much for one person. Dentistry needs everybody now. One person cannot do it all. They wear too many hats.
How many states and practices have you worked in, would you say?
We've worked in over 3,000 actual client practices from training and coaching.
Damn.
I speak to about 6,500. We call them BICs, butts and chairs, a year. That's my assistant Mel's name for it, butts and chairs. And we've been doing this for 20 solid years. We've been in the United States for the last 11.
So interacting with that many dentists, are you on right now? Are you on Michael Jackson's Propanol, or are you on Prince's fentanyl? Which one are you currently self-medicating with?
I'm not. What do those medications do? Do they make you sleep and be calm? Because that'll never happen.
So you've been crushing it for decades. So I want to get to this. It seems like when I talk to dentists, they believe in silver bullets. I don't know if it's all the advertising Coors did or whatever. There's always this miracle silver bullet, and it always seems to me like they think, well, if I just learn TMJ, or if I just learned to place implants, or if I just bought a laser, or if I just did same-day dentistry, they're always looking for a silver bullet while there's a hurricane running into a tornado in their business. And I always say, get your business poised for growth and buy a consultant. And they always say, oh, hell no. What would a consultant know that I don't know? I was always the smartest one in the room. I got A's in math, chemistry, physics. I'm the smartest guy I ever met. What do are any of these technologies a silver bullet? I mean, do you see when you see all these offices, are the more successful ones the ones that did same day dentistry, lasers, sleep apnea, Invisalign? What's the silver bullet?
There isn't one. I get asked this all the time. What is the biggest challenge in dentistry? Is there is no magic fairy dust or just one answer. If I compare the dental practice to like a whack-a-mole game. Have you ever played the gopher
Yeah,
game, the
yeah.
whack-a-mole game? So you stand up there with a big hammer, and as soon as you hit three heads down on the right, four more pop up over here. There is not one thing someone did to make them there's not just one thing. It's a combination of all these, and there's 25 gopher heads running every day in dentistry in these 5 areas of CREPT that have to be addressed. And if one falls down, then it's like a domino effect on the others. So I wish I could tell you there's one thing. I'd probably be in a catamaran in Tahiti if I knew what that was, like you would, but there isn't just one thing. I can say you put the people first, you focus on the patient experience and the satisfaction. They'll stay loyal no matter who moves into town because it's a relationship business. You make dentistry affordable and you help your patients know the best it has to offer because it is the gateway to overall body wellness. And if you think about it, Howard, the number one reason both Canadians and Americans don't show up to the dental appointment, especially with its hygiene, is it's just a cleaning. Well, we've trained them that way,
Well,
right? And
well,
go
last
ahead.
night I was talking to a tooth fairy riding a unicorn, and she said if I just bought a laser, it'd solve all my problems.
Sure, a laser can help you with your productivity per provider, help your treatment procedures, but guess what? If a patient doesn't say yes with a smile on their face agreeing to buy that procedure, I don't get to use my laser. And if they're not happy with the procedure or the team didn't explain it properly and then they get the bill, I mean, it just all goes, it's so hand in hand of this joint effort. And I think probably why, if you say to a dentist why have you not brought in someone that's been teaching this for decades, really how to run a dental practice, how isn't that different? The people are different. The uniqueness comes from the community, the demographic, the generational, the genders, all those things. But these systems have been around forever. It's
So
dentistry won't do them.
is one quick fix for the dentist to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm not interested in business. I mean, and I get it. I'd rather do an apicoectomy than probably win the lottery today. I mean, I get it. Clinical dentistry is awesome. Do you think one quick band-aid is just get an office manager and make her do all that stuff? Is it more common in successful offices to have an office manager or not, or is that not one of them?
Well,
Is the
I don't
office
really.
manager a magic bullet?
Um, I don't call the office manager a magic bullet, but defining the management model is absolutely a magic bullet. So think of it, the leadership and the ownership model is the dentist. The management model is what's the culture? How do we function? What's our playbook? Think about it. They run every day like a Hail Mary. What football team's ever going to win the Super Bowl or even win a football game or score a touchdown without a playbook? The magic bullet is the playbook. I think the management model, though, is very critical because it runs the playbook. You can have all the protocols in the world and buy a book, but if there's not the people there to work the system, then it's so the magic bullet is they've got to define a management model because no matter how hard they try, they're in a 10 by 10 room. Every waking hour, the business is open, trying to produce at least 60 cents on every dollar. I don't know anyone that can be good at everything while doing that. It's a very unorthodox entrepreneur model, really.
Okay, you just shocked my homies because they were expecting a Wayne Gretzky hockey metaphor, not a football metaphor from a damn Canadian. So
I still love football.
you have
Our
to
field's
redo
longer,
that
don't
whole
forget that.
you have to redo that whole metaphor with Wayne Gretzky or they'll all be sad.
Okay, so what's my what was my metaphor? It was with sorry, what was my metaphor I was just doing?
Wayne Gretzky, by the way,
Oh,
he lived in my this town, Phoenix, Arizona. Did you know that he lived
yes,
here
he
for a
did.
while?
I actually saw quite a few of the hockey games there.
And when he got busted for gambling on hockey, he blamed it on his wife. What a man! My God, what a man! When you get caught
What a
gambling,
Canadian.
no man, my wife had my iPhone. That I can't believe she was gambling on my iPhone. Gotta love Wayne. So again, I'm trying to motivate my homies to invest in consultants and not technology. I want them to buy technology. Boys have toys. I mean, we do, and if they want to buy a boat or a cabin or a jet ski or a laser, I don't care. You only live once. Be happy and have fun. But I just don't think if you buy a cabin or a boat, it's going to fix your family. I don't think if you buy a laser or a CAD cam, it's going to fix your business. You need to fix your family. And then if you want to go to a cabin, you don't sit there and say, well, we
Yeah.
just had a cabin, we'd all be happy. And so they all, you talked earlier about they won't be transparent with their numbers. I mean, that's a human condition. I mean, no one knew what Germany was doing. And then all of a sudden, Poland found out what Germany was up to, and it was the Blitzkrieg. I mean, the Russians and the Soviets, I mean, we fly so many satellites over each other all day long, want to know what our missile silos are doing, if their gates are open. So it's the human condition not to be transparent. And
Yeah.
they always say the same thing. They always say, well, my assistant found out how much money I was making. I said, well, then tell her to go to dental school. Because your dental
Yeah.
assistant's looking at you saying, I don't know what they did to you in dental school, but you are one messed up cookie. Either your mom dropped you and then you bounced down the stairway, or dental school wiped you. I mean, if your assistant wanted to go to dental school, she'd already be in dental school. She doesn't want to be you. She looks at you and feels sorry for you. So how can you get these guys to open up their transparency?
Well, they just have to, I think it's looking at what's working, what's not working, and get out of denial of just hoping it's going to like magically get better without doing anything different. I think change is not a bad thing. Strategized change is a great way to move into the future. I think the burnout and the stuckness comes from it's easier to blame an outside source than it is to look in the mirror. So if I had one advice, if you could look in the mirror, look at all your gifts and what you're good at, look at where you can find the right fit to get you help with what's not working. There is no reason every single dental practice in North America should not be growing minimally 10 to 15% top line every single year.
Well, I looked in the mirror, and the mirror said that the mirror was the fairest of them all. So I took a sledgehammer to that mirror. I am mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? How do you what do you? I think it's fear. I personally, I think they're afraid that they want to be all that. I mean, they just live this like the Who song, Eminence Front. It's a put on. They want to be all that, and then when you come in there, you're gonna find out that they got skeletons in the closet. Their office is not. What do you think they're afraid of? It's got to be fear, because the greed is. I know when they give $1 to a consultant, they get their buck back and another one. All the $1 million practices know that. So the ones that aren't, it can't be greed, because the greed is they're going to make the money they give you and make it back. So it's got to be fear. What do you think they're afraid of? Is it embarrassment? Is it ego? Is it you're going to fire my favorite dental assistant? Is it what do you think they're afraid of?
Well, fear to me is the acronym future event appearing real that my imagination creates that hasn't happened yet. So I think a lot of it is them not knowing. I think wondering, are they still going to be able to do certain things their way? What are they afraid of is change. And I mean, if you're to think of what's your greatest fear, what keeps you up at night isn't necessarily what you fear. What they fear is they're going to need to do something different. And think about it, they have to be with a patient all day, right? They have to do something different. They have to do the change. And, dentists that have been 30 years said, Lisa, I just want to go back to the good old days where you just showed up and it all just fell together. And I go, wouldn't that be nice? It doesn't happen like that anymore. The people have changed, the treatments have changed, the professions changed, the competition, the cultural, everything. So I think, what do I think they fear the most? Sometimes, I'd say probably generalizing, a lot of dentists are perfectionists. And perfectionists are always miserable their whole life because perfect doesn't exist. And they're always never getting to a place that they never get to that they think is there. So we work really hard on celebrate progress in the small steps forward and let go of perfectionism, because no one's perfect. And we don't come in there to find what's wrong with you. We actually come in there to find what's right with you so that we can help you change what you can do very simply and organically that you can't see because you're in it. If you came into my business, Howard, you would have great tips for me because you're not in it. People coming from the outside, you do have to get someone that connects with you, and I do think they have to find someone that will listen to their uniqueness with empathy, not sympathy, with empathy. And it's just understand, I can tell you we've grown empathy, sympathy, and a lot of other things working with so many different practices, but it's about seek first to understand, then be understood. And with consultants, you know, when dentists said I've had 4 and I hated all of them, I say, well, why do you want to make me your 5th bad story, right? Because who's the common denominator, doctor, with all due respect, isn't me, right? The common denominator is what is it that's blocking you from having a better future than your past? And it's often them. Or they just, you know what, they don't see any other way to do it.
I always tell them, I always look them in the eye and say, why are you afraid of a consultant when you weren't afraid enough to marry that person you're with?
How does that go over?
I say, if you were brave enough to walk down the aisle with that, you know, how it'd be 100 times easier to walk down the aisle of a consultant. So how do my homies contact you? What's the best way to get a hold of Lisa Philp?
They can call 1-800-345-5157. Or they can go onto our website. We have complimentary rankings and scorecards of all the different facets of their practice. If they want to do a confidential scoring of where they're at in their ideal behaviors with the 5 engines, they can call. My team will definitely help them with that. There's no obligation. We have been here for a quarter of a century. I don't know how many more quarters of a century we'll be here for. However, until we're both talking, as you know, you're still loving this, and we're here to make dentistry better. And better is your better, not our better.
And your website's Transitions Online. What if they wanted to email Lisa or email you? What's your email?
Well, I think the best way is because someone else checks it every hour is info@transitionsonline.com.
Info@transitionsonline. And what's the phone number again?
.com. And it's 1-800-345-5157.
And what if you're a dentist listening to this and you think, I heard on Fox News that all Canadians were socialists, and they're afraid that they're going to call you up and start getting this brainwashing of socialism?
No, we have Canadian and Americans that service both of the countries. Some go back and forth, like I do with speaking, but here's the thing. Canadians and Americans are the same. There's a few differences. Dentistry in Canada is actually more profitable and fee for service. We don't have managed care. As far as the 4 or 5 differences in the dentistry is the same. It's the people that make it unique. So we can service both countries.
I just have one question that's selfishly all mine.
Great.
If Trump wins, can I move in with you and will you hire me?
Well, we have a 36-year-old millennial who's legalizing marijuana for all the old people. So I'm not sure which one's better.
You got a rock star of a president. He's his dad was his dad the prime minister back
Yes.
Back in the day. It's a French name. What is it? Trudeau,
yes. The challenge with him, Howard, though, is he's going after not corporate, all the top 1% entrepreneurs, which includes dentists, right?
Yeah.
And he's taken a big hit on the take homes to help all the wonderful, all the wonderful socialistic people we love to help, so everybody's equal.
Well, hey, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that I've had a lot of my friends and homies that are big fans of yours. You've helped a lot of my friends, and I think you're a rock star. You're a legend, and it's just been a huge honor that you'd spend an hour with me today on my show.
Thank you. Anytime, Howard. You keep laughing. Keep making us laugh, okay?
Okay.
It's not that serious.
Have a rockin' hot day, Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.